The spring afternoon at Windsor was meant to be like any other, quiet, controlled, and brimming with the weight of tradition. But something felt off, a tension lurking beneath the polished surface. Princess Catherine could feel it the moment. They all gathered for the lunch, each moment of the day meticulously planned, each person playing their part. It was one of those rare moments when multiple generations of the royal family came together under one roof, an event that had the potential to bring everyone closer, but always carried its own kind of weight. For Catherine, this was no exception. She had learned the importance of trusting her instincts over the years, especially when it came to her children. Charlotte had been unusually quiet, not angry or upset, just withdrawn, as though trying to disappear into the background. And that wasn't like her at all. Charlotte had been sent to sit with her cousins in a side room, expected to behave as any royal child would, polite, composed, and quietly enjoying the tea while the adults mingled. Catherine had helped her into her seat, kissed her forehead, and left with a glance over her shoulder, reassured that all seemed normal. But that nagging feeling, it wouldn't go away. It wasn't long before Catherine, deep in conversation with one of the senior courtiers, saw Charlotte walk past a door, her face ashen, her lips pressed tightly together. She wasn't crying, but something about her demeanor was unmistakable. Something was wrong. Catherine excused herself and followed, her mother's heart pushing her forward. There, at the far end of the hall, Charlotte stood, her hands clasped in front of her, her eyes on the floor. "What happened?" Catherine asked gently, her voice soft, like a whisper through a storm. Charlotte hesitated, and then spoke in a voice so quiet it almost broke Catherine's heart. "Nothing, Mommy," she said, but Catherine wasn't fooled. "Sweetheart, I know when something's wrong." And then Charlotte spoke the words that would change everything. Granny Camilla said, "I was showing off. She told me not to speak unless I was spoken to." A cold silence hung between them. Catherine's heart sank. The harshness of the words, the weight of them, felt like a blow she hadn't seen coming. Camilla, always with her own set of rules about how things should be, rules that often carried more weight than they let on. Catherine held Charlotte close, steady on the outside, but her insides churned. Camilla's words hadn't just stung, they had planted a seed of doubt in Charlotte's mind. The afternoon went on, but for Catherine, everything had changed. She couldn't look at Camilla the same way. Not now, not after what she had seen. It wasn't the first remark, it was the pattern, the subtle dismissals, the quiet attempts to shrink Charlotte's presence later. During their walk through the gardens, Catherine's eyes never left Camilla. Every word she spoke, every gesture she made, was under Catherine's watchful gaze. And it wasn't just the comment about the second scone, it was everything. The repeated silencing, the soft jabs, the subtle belittling. The more Catherine saw, the more she understood that this wasn't a one-time thing. At that moment, she made a decision. This wouldn't be ignored anymore. That evening, back at Adelaide Cottage, Catherine tucked Charlotte into bed herself. The quiet of the house was only broken by the soft sound of Charlotte's voice. "Granny Camilla doesn't like when I talk too much," she said, her words simple and direct, a child's honest reflection of what had happened. Catherine kissed her forehead, her heart breaking a little more, and walked away, knowing that things couldn't stay as they were. When she told William what had happened, there was no anger in her voice, just clarity. This wasn't something they could let slide. William, usually the one to keep the peace, listened. He didn't interrupt, but his silence spoke volumes. The next morning, Catherine made a call. Charlotte wouldn't be attending the event Camilla had planned for the royal grandchildren. The excuse was a minor cold, but the truth was, Catherine wasn't ready to send Charlotte back into that environment. Not until she was certain she'd be safe there. Word got back to Camilla. Her response was subtle but sharp. "Probably too delicate for a little mud," she remarked under her breath. But Catherine had heard it, as she always did. A week later, at a private dinner at Highgrove, the situation reached a boiling point. Charlotte, having come in only to greet her grandfather, was met with another pointed jab from Camilla. "Are you sure you're not too tired to be here?" she asked, her tone laced with disdain. Catherine didn't wait this time. She wasn't going to let this slide anymore. She turned to Charlotte and, with a calm that belied the storm inside her, said, "Why don't you go say goodnight to Grandpa and head upstairs with Anna?" The moment Charlotte left the room, the atmosphere shifted. The polite chatter that had filled the room moments earlier was replaced by a heavy silence. Camilla's words still hung in the air. "She's very sensitive, isn't she?" she said, almost as if it were a fact. That's when Catherine's voice broke through the silence. "No, she's not too sensitive," she said, her words as sharp as the look in her eyes. "She's a child, and she deserves to be spoken to with kindness." The room held its breath. No one interrupted. Catherine stood tall. "If it were just one comment, I'd move on. But it's not. It's a pattern. And I won't stand by while my daughter is made to feel less than." Camilla shifted uncomfortably, but Catherine wasn't done. "I've kept the peace for too long. I've ignored moments that didn't feel right. But this is different. This is about Charlotte, and I won't let anyone undermine her confidence." The room fell silent again, but this time it wasn't an uncomfortable silence. It was the silence of a mother who had finally found her voice, and she wasn't going to let it go. The royal family would never be the same, and neither would Catherine. Catherine had always believed that children were resilient, but this was different. Her expression didn't change when Camilla made her comment, but inside, a quiet resolve was building. Catherine knew that children remember how they're spoken to, especially by those who are supposed to protect them. It wasn't about drama or loud confrontations. It was about the power in the steady, unshakable voice of a mother who had reached her limit. "We're asking for basic respect," William finally spoke, his voice firm but calm. "Charlotte hasn't done anything wrong. She's just being herself. That shouldn't be a problem." Catherine didn't flinch. She'd already drawn her line in the sand, and once that boundary was set, there was no going back. Camilla, looking to Charles for support, saw only silence from him. He knew it was better not to push. Catherine was laying down a boundary. Everyone in the room felt the shift, but no one dared challenge it. After a few moments, Catherine excused herself, and William followed soon after. Upstairs, Catherine found Charlotte already in bed. Without asking, she sat beside her daughter and simply held her hand. "You did nothing wrong," Catherine said softly, her voice wrapped in assurance. "You were polite, you were kind, and that's all I'll ever ask of you." Charlotte's gaze met hers, a small frown tugging at her lips. "I tried to be," she said, her voice filled with uncertainty. Catherine smiled gently. "You don't have to try to be perfect. You just have to be you." Downstairs, Charles tried to ease the tension by changing the topic, but Camilla remained quiet. She didn't apologize, but she didn't defend herself either. That night, in the quiet of their room at Adelaide Cottage, Catherine and William spoke in hushed tones. "She doesn't need to like me," Catherine said, "but she will treat Charlotte with respect. That's non-negotiable." William nodded. "She will," he agreed, "because we're not letting this continue." The following days were polite, but changed. When it was time for Charlotte's school recital at Lambrook, Catherine made the decision to only invite immediate family. Camilla wasn't included. The palace explained it away as a scheduling conflict, but those close to the family knew the real reason. In public, everything appeared normal, smiling faces in photographs, perfectly posed for the press butt inside the walls of the palace. Things had shifted. Camilla remained at major events, but she kept her distance from Charlotte. There were no more snide comments, no more looks at least not where Catherine could hear. Catherine had drawn her line, and everyone knew it. And then came the summer at Balmoral, a place Charles had always considered an escape, a place to breathe, think, and reconnect. It had been the Queen's favorite spot, and every year, the family gathered there for some time away from the world's prying eyes. But this year, something felt different. Catherine had agreed to come, but with clear boundaries. She and William arrived with all 3 children, but Catherine had made it clear to Williams would not leave Charlotte alone with Camilla, not even for a few minutes. The first few days were calm long walks, quiet dinners, the children playing in the fields, but something was bound to happen. Catherine was in the drawing room with Lady Sarah Cheteau and a few staff when one of the household aides leaned in. "I believe Princess Charlotte is in the sunroom with Her Majesty," the aide said. Catherine's posture stiffened, her mind raced, and without a word, she excused herself and quickly walked to the sunroom. She paused outside the door, hearing voices Camilla's and Charlotte's. "We don't always need to speak over others." "Charlotte," Camilla was saying, her tone light, but there was an edge to it. "It's important to listen. Sometimes your mommy forgets that too." Charlotte didn't reply. Catherine opened the door and looked at Camilla with calm determination. "There you are," she said, her voice even. "I was looking for you, darling." Charlotte immediately got up and walked over to her mother. Camilla, a bit caught off guard, smiled tightly. "I was just having a word," she said, her tone still light but hinting at something sharper. Catherine didn't miss a beat. "She was only being a child," she said firmly, "and she doesn't need to be corrected for that every time she speaks." Camilla, arms folded, looked at her. "I've raised children. I know when a girl's growing too fast for her own good." "She's growing up just fine," Catherine replied, her voice unwavering, "and she'd do so without being made to feel like a problem." There was no shouting, there was no dramatic flair. It was simply clarity, a line drawn in the sand, one that left no room for argument. "I'd like a bit more kindness around her," Catherine added, her voice steady, but with a weight that hung in the air. Camilla didn't respond. Her silence was deafening, but Catherine didn't care anymore. The years of tolerating things for the sake of appearances were gone. Now her focus was on something far more important, protecting her daughter. Later, as they left the sunroom, Catherine knelt beside Charlotte in the hallway. "You did nothing wrong," she whispered, her voice soft with love. Charlotte nodded, her eyes still a little watery. Catherine kissed her forehead, reminding her, "You never need to be afraid of speaking up." By the end of the week, Camilla kept her distance. At mealtimes, she sat further away from the children, not making any comments about their behavior or their tone. It was a subtle shift, but in the royal world, subtlety meant everything. Catherine had never exploded. She hadn't caused a scandal, but her presence had drawn a line that no one could ignore. Even Charles, who had hoped the tension would pass, knew better than to intervene. He adored both women, but he understood when Catherine stood her ground, she did so with reason. And when she made a stand, it was final. That summer ended with the usual photo smiles, waves, and perfectly staged family moments. But inside the palace, everything had changed. Camilla had lost something she didn't even realize. She was losing the tolerance Catherine had once shown for the sake of keeping peace. That tolerance was gone. The world saw unity, but Catherine had made sure her daughter would never feel small again. No matter the royal hierarchy or the unspoken rules, Catherine knew there was one thing that could never be compromised: her children's dignity. What would you have done if you were in Catherine's shoes? Do you think Camilla crossed a line? Or was this just a clash of two different generations? Share your thoughts in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more. And check out the next video on your screen.